Rabbit tails, come and hear ya.
Welcome, gentlemen. It's the fifth episode of Rabbit Tales, and we're very excited today. Got a very special guest all the way from California, 1977 world champion, Shaun Tomson. G'day, Shaun.
Stoked to be here. Stoked to be here with my old friend and rival, Rabbit. We had some unbelievable times together, and great to say, how's it, Tim?
Yeah. And it's good timing. We're up to sort of the winter of 74, 75 in Hawaii, which I'm sure was a very pivotal time in both your lives. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your reminiscences. Bugs, I don't know, do you want to kind of kick off sort of setting the scene? 1974, the Coke contest had started. I think you'd had your first trip to Bali as well.
Yeah, well, 74 was that, I think Shaun and I were both, I think Shaun's about 6 months younger than me, but around with that age where I think we've both spoken, coming up to 19 years of age, ready to go, ready to charge and taking on, we had that first Australian league where there was the Coke Classic, the Bells event, and then, of course, later in the year, the events was already completely well established in Hawaii, and we were trying to break into the events on the North Shore, and it was an amazing time. There was two things happening, I felt. One was, Shaun Tomson, Mark Richards, myself, we were all trying to break into the big time to get invites to the Smirnoff Pro, to the Duke Hanamoku Classic, to the Pipeline Masters, and then on the other side, we were 19 years of age and absolutely ready to charge Pipeline, and we'll have a crack at it anyway. So I kind of, we might start there and we might go back. I mean, I want to go back, Shaun, and go back to your first trip to J Bay and all that kind of stuff, and the early days in the Bay of Plenty, which I love, still love coming to. But I'd like to start. We picked you up at the airport in I think it was late October or early November 1974, and. We picked you up, Ian Cairns and I picked you up from the airport. We went out to the North Shore, and it was absolutely cracking at Off the Wall that day. Remember?
I'd never surfed there before. But what was amazing, think of it like this. So in order to get picked up, we didn't have telephones. So I had to write a letter somehow, find Ian Cairns' address. It was usually Poste Restante, Haleiwa Post Office.
Yep.
All the international guys, you should just write your name and Poste Restante, Haleiwa Post Office, and all this mail would come. And so I've written a letter, I don't know, a month before saying, I'm coming to Hawaii. Can you pick me up on such and such a date, on such and such a time? And you and Ian pull up, get me, I jump in. I've just finished my economics exams, my first year at university. I'm like, what? I've been studying, cramming for the last sort of 6 weeks. You take me to this place off the wall. You take me to paradise, and it's perfect. And you go out there, and Phil Burns out there. And it was like so amazing and eye-opening. And it was like seeing Hawaii in such a different way, because that break was never part of our consciousness. They had Pipeline, Backdoor Pipeline, Sunset, Rocky Point, but Off the Wall was this new ground, and to have these like perfect wedgy right peaks just funneling in there, and the best guys in the world. It was amazing, wonderful experience.
Well, I remember very well, because in the days leading up to it, Ian had said, I was staying with Ian, and he'd said that, Shaun Tomson's coming, and we're going to go and pick him up at the airport. I remember in the morning he said, we're going to go and pick Shaun Tomson up, and it was a big ride into Honolulu Airport at that time. It wasn't like right now where you get on the H1 and all that. I mean, it was a big deal to go into Honolulu, and it's true what you say. It's hard to relate now because it's all email, and you just instantly now you're in touch with the whole globe. Back then it was like an aerogram that took 12 to 14 days to reach another part of the world, and then another 12 or 14 days to get the reply back. And that day, though, was amazing, because we'd been surfing it a little bit because it was a break that Jeff Hackman had told us about. Yeah. He said there's a little break in between when the swell goes down, because it was back in that macho era where it it was just big wave riding only, exclusively. It was, it was Sunset Beach, it was Pipeline, and there's a little bit of fun surf in between, like Rocky Point, Sunset Point. And Hackman told us about this little break that off the wall that broke just on the other side of Backdoor Pipe when the swell went down to like 4 to 6 feet, which was small. This place broke, and so we started surfing it. But that day, when we picked you up, there'd been before that a lot of north swell, and it built a sandbank up.
It was a lot of sand. It was like almost like a point.
No, it was like a point. It was breaking, like you're basically taking off just this side of Ayakai, going right through Backdoor and connecting with off the wall. So that particular day, they weren't so separate. They were actually like more like a point break. It was more like the Bay of Plenty or Kira.
It's amazing, that we can remember this, because I can remember clearly seeing Phil Byrne, who became one of my best mates, in a pair of pink. I'd never seen Quicksilver board shorts before. In a pair of these pink shorts with his blonde hair, and I'm looking, going, who is this guy? I'd heard of Rabbit, I'd heard of all the famous, but I'd never heard of Phil. And Phil was ripping. I'm going, wow, there's so many amazing surfers here, yeah. And it's like being thrust into that sort of hotbed of just rad surfing. It was so fun and so free and so it was just so eye-opening and so like warm. When I say warm, not just from a physical perspective, but just from a heart perspective, it was so cool.
Yeah, and the real, I mean, you had your Springbok trunks on.
Yeah. My sports, yeah.
We didn't have sponsors. You had the national team trunks on. But the big deal back then, though, really was, it was really Sunset, though, wasn't it?
To have your
you and I had a line, but Sunset was where it was all about. Remember, it was Sunset without leashes.
Yeah, no leashes. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was talking to me about, like what used to happen at Sunset. I used to say, a northwest 12-foot set would come through at Sunset. It would clean up every single person in the lineup. You'd swim in through the rip, and there was boards stacked 3 high or 4 high, covered in foam, and you'd be pulling your board out of the stack. I said, you don't even understand. There were stacks of boards in front of Val Reef in the rip, and you hoped that you could get to your board before you were swimming out to Camiland, because there was no way you were letting your board go. And the amount of times I remember swimming out there at 4:30 when the sun's going down there, and it's starting to get spooky, and there's tiger sharks in that channel, and your board's about 400 yards out, and you're swimming towards your board, and you're hoping you can get to your board before that sneaker set of camis rolls it in, and then you've got to swim all the way around. So, yeah, it was just a different. I think there was an intensity level there that was just different.
And it was also having a learning. We had to learn, like you see, on a say a west and northwest swell, your board would kind of all those boards would congregate in near Velsie, on the shore there. But in a north swell, your boards would go into the channel. Yeah, and you had to work out whether if you went into Val's Reef, but your board was in the channel, it had a big head start on you. But if you went into the channel and your board had gone, then you had to actually swim all the way around. It was such a. I remember one time I was out there, Terry Fitzgerald and I the sun was on the brink of going down. It was sunset. We're out the back of Camiland, and the boards are still like we're just catching up with them. And I turned around to him and said, "Look, I think I'm going back," And he said, it is too late for that. He said, we've got to get those boards. And then we had to paddle over into Sunset and come in through the main peak at dark. It was classic what we used to think was normal.
So I thought that winter, I thought I'm going to be really wise now. I've got like a plan for like not getting cleaned up at Sunset, because Sunset, it's the most unpredictable wave in the world, especially when it's like 10 to 12, maybe 15-foot sets from the northwest. You don't know where that peak is moving around. You don't know where and how you're going to get cleaned up, but you do know you're going to get cleaned up. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do, I was like 18, 19. I thought, I'm going to follow Eddie Arkell. I'm going to shadow this dude because he knows the place better than anyone. And if I just shadow Eddie Arkell, there's no way I'm going to get caught inside. Of course, I started shadowing Eddie Arkell. Next thing, this monster 15-foot set comes and it lands square on our heads. I'm going, like, even Eddie Aikau couldn't work out Sunset.
I know, it was amazing. I used to kind of watch guys like Al Chapman and Reno. They seemed like they knew Sunset as well too, but it's the same thing. And I remember we used to, you're going to get cleaned up, and you had to decide whether you're going to try and hang on to your board in some way and wrap your feet around it. And remember, we'd put our back into it, wrap our legs around the board. It was outrageous. And boards are missiles are just flying out of the whitewater towards you, like 12 of them. It was a crazy scene. But wow! And what about those North days when it was just the us guys, and Reno. Yeah, and Reno and those guys are going, no, it's today's just Aussie Day or something, and it was those.
I love them because that's when you got that inside ledgy.
Yeah.
You got that inside ledgy double up section, which, Sunset's one of the best tubes on the North Shore, that inside section that runs through on that north, on that north swell when it, you got like a 10-foot wave on the outside and then it just sort of reforms up. And you get that whole big wall bending at you, and you've got all those surges and boils that you have to get through. I think I've had some of the best tubes of my life through that. That's super sort of complicated and like technical. It's not like perfect like
pipe,
but it's certainly a vicious boat. I love that. I love that.
Well, it'd be like on those North days where you're really actually taking off on that mid part of the wave, aren't you? You weren't taking off on the outside. It was too washy and hard to read. And the ones that really lined up would sort of rear up about just after the West Bowl, and now the ones, and if they connected, but it was tricky because it was hard to read and know the ones that you're going to be able to pull in the barrel and actually make it out, and boy, they'd slap you pretty hard.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun to think about that and. To see the camaraderie we had and the respect we had for each other. And, when I think about it, we'd all hang out together. We'd be at Arisha's food truck and we'd all be there chowing down sandwiches, and she'd move her truck around wherever the surf was good. She might be off the wall or she might be at Sunset. And there was this wonderful spirit. Yes, we wanted to beat the hell out of each other in heats, but there was this wonderful spirit, I think, amongst us. And it's never, I don't think it's really, people have not seen that as a factor in how the sport was created, because there was this sort of love for the sport and love for the lifestyle, but there was also this connectivity with each other and this wonderful respect. My mom calls it, I chatted to her the other day, she just turned 90, and she calls it the simpatico. She grew up on the island of Malta in the Second World War, so it was like all Italian speaking there. But there's this sort of, it's both respect and sympathy and empathy. It's a beautiful word, and we certainly had that with all of us. And when I think back, and yes, a lot of people think, busting down the door, and there was this conflict. The whole conflict period was very, very short. And we only had this amazing respect from, when I think about Barry Kanaiapuni and Reno and Booby and Eddie and all these amazing guys, we were all like this. We never ever had them up. There was no beef ever. I never ever had a beef with a Hawaiian surfer, whether it was Dan Kiloa. Yes, some of the gangsters and the hoods, but certainly not with these wonderful guys that were emblematic of like Hawaiian royalty. They were like you say, and in Busting Down the Sword, you said they were the gods, and that's what they were to us.
Yeah, and you're right. The camaraderie was amazing because there was the two places where we'd all come together. One was Arisha's, and I was going to ask you about that. That was fantastic, and we'd all, in between, we'd talk about the session we just had, and then we'd have our smoothies, and it was all health food, and it was incredible. Yeah. And we'd all meet there, and then there was Bernie Baker's front yard.
Oh.
And that's where we all hung.
That place, and because Sunset was sort of the center of competitive surfing in the world, that's where all the big events were. I think there was like 3 events at Sunset. 3 events at Sunset, and then Pipeline Masters, but 3 events at Sunset. Sometimes they would move it and it would end up at Haleiwa, but generally the primary locations were Sunset. So we all sit outside Bernie's backyard, And, we'd all catch up and talk about this and talk about that. But it was just this great gathering place. And, I wonder today when I see how professional surfing is developed, and certainly I'm a massive fan of pro surfing, I don't know if there's that same level of connectivity and camaraderie with the different athletes and the different nationalities. You know what I mean? Perhaps there's some friendships, but it was like this whole group together, all with the same mission and purpose, that we all wanted to be the best in the world. Yes, and we all wanted to ride this pro surfing bandwagon that was just happening. There was a purity there. I mean, there was this purity there that was so, I think it was rare. It was so pure, and the connectivity between all of us was pure, man.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys about was that sort of quaint tradition at the time. We had to actually write letters to the contest directors to try and get into the surf contest. Like, that must seem so kind of foreign to a current generation of pro surfers. You guys would actually sit down and write these very formal, polite letters to Fred Hemming.
Well, there was such a hierarchy, and there was such a pecking order. And we had to sort of, you have to work your way into it. It's natural attrition. You have to work your way into that pecking order, particularly at Sunset Beach. And the best surfers in the world did have the invites to the events, but there was a few little gaps in between. Like, I think, remember, Sean, they'd invite, Fred would invite the national champions from various countries.
Yeah.
And I think
you had it harder than me. I had it easier because it was just it was like one or two South African gaps, and not many South Africans going over there. So I slipstreamed in there.
But still, there was that one particular time where we'd written the letters, and there was, I do believe there was yourself, Mark Richards, Mark Warren, and myself, and there was four of us going for the one spot, and I think it was Tigger Newling from Great Britain.
It was.
He had the invite to the Smirnoff. We thought we were all out, and
I think or Tiger Macon. I think it was Tiger Macon or Tigger. One of them. One of those two guys.
Tigger or Tiger, but and he didn't show. He didn't pitch up, and the word was out, and we all thought our letters were the best, right? And dear Fred, here's why I should get that invite.
I won the Newcastle Pro.
Oh,
that's MR won the Newcastle Pro. I won the Gunston.
Yeah, I won the Queensland title. Yeah,
you won the Queensland titles, didn't you? Something like that. We had written them and told them how great we are.
And then we stood there that day, and Fred Hemmings, and we were just going, "Please let it be me." And Fred said, "It's Mark Richards." In the Smirnoff Pro, and we were rooting for him. Remember, we were stoked for him, even though it was like we were a bit crestfallen that we didn't get the invite. But we were going, well, he represents us.
Yeah. No, I thought it was and he was the youngest of all of us too.
He was a bit younger than us.
Emma's younger than all of us, and that's when they moved the contest to Waimea, and it was immense. And Mark really put in a terrific display out there. With his sort of with his radical conservatism. He's told me he has never ever wiped out at Waimea Bay.
Yeah, that'd be right. My
first wave at Waimea Bay, I had the worst wipe out of my life in the contest the next year. But I'm saying that Emma just had this. He was so good at late takeoffs.
He was so good.
Good.
And he didn't go the macking biggest ways, but he got the ones that would he was so smart and he was so good at positioning, and he swooped into those takeoffs so perfect.
I'd be fluttering at the top, and my board would be like fluttering through space, and then you just get hammered, and Emma would just cut it.
Yeah, you just cut it. I mean, but it also, the whole, it was so different back then too, Sean. I thought, like, I remember many days in for the Duke, and that they would wait. First of all, the events were mobile. I mean, if it got too big for Sunset, they'd move to Waimea. They'd move to Haleiwa. But I do also remember that they would there was no way they would ever hold a contest if it was only 6 to 8 feet. No way in the world.
No way.
It had to be 12 to 15 feet.
Yeah, it had to be serious.
It had to be really, like they'd wait and they'd go, you know, there wasn't the forecasting that there is now, but you always knew when those big, deep lows were coming off Japan and there was a big macking swell coming to the North Shore. And we knew days in advance, we got to get ready. The Duke's going to be at 12 to 15 foot west swell sunset.
Yeah, but you know, I loved the sport. The professional aspect of the sport started with that concept of having events in great surf. Then we lost the plot through the 80s, and we were surfing. I remember, I think one of my last years on tour, I might have surfed 32 events, and I don't think any event was over 3 foot in Florida, all these places where the surf was so mediocre. And then when you took over control of the ASP, you finally took it back to this concept, and we've stuck with that concept. People love to watch surfers in the best waves. The best surfers in the best waves. It's such a simple mission statement. And that was wonderful that you were able to be there in the beginning and then shift the direction and turn it into what it is today, because it could have been a very different, we could have had a very different landscape if we'd followed this path of these small waves, and you know, there could have been all these radical aerial events, and you know the whole, it wouldn't have been reflective, I think, of the purity and also the radical aspect of surfing. So it was great. You know, I love to see that evolution of how you were there in the beginning, then you were a competitor, the sport went, and then you brought it back. It was brilliant.
Thanks, Sean.
I don't think people understand. I mean, people know you about busting down the door and all that sort of stuff, but in terms of moving the needle and pushing surfing down this pure mission path of best surfers, best waves, it's fundamental to the success and the consumer awareness and the fan. That's what the fans love it, man. Like, I watched Pipeline this year. That's got to be one of the best concerts I've ever watched in my life with Gabriel and Italo. And it was like so exciting. It was unbelievable, and it was all based around that simple thesis: best surfers, best waves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's true that in the late 80s and into the 90s, you know, it was that whole summer and pre-summer events. It was grandstands. It was the bums on bleachers over, you know, and we know it's really not the endless summer. It's the endless fall. The best waves are in autumn and coming into winter all around the world. And you know, it did take quite a bit of a mindset shift, because the whole promotion was to you know, get companies to support the sport that were into a summer promotion, and not the, as you said, the heart and soul of what it's really all about. And what it's really all about is exactly, and it's a simple formula: best surfers, best waves. I mean, it is a simple formula.
I'll tell you, I want to talk to you about something, and we've never ever spoken about this before, and it's never ever been spoken about ever. Okay, so this is about tube riding. Okay, so this is, over the last years, you know, I've been thinking about it, you know, tube riding and the development of tube riding. And certainly, you know, you had Conrad Kana, who was this legendary goofy foot from Ala Moana Pipeline. He was the first guy to really pull in with technique. And then there was Jerry Lopez, of course. And then you had us guys, okay? Now you had schools. There's two schools here, okay?
Yeah.
So you've got the Burley Kira School.
Yep.
You, PT, the Mad Monk, Michael Peterson, okay? Then you've got Bay of Plenty, okay?
And Cave Rock.
Cave Rock, Bay of Plenty and Cave Rock, yeah. But really, you know, the Bay of Plenty, you've got those long, bending, technical barrels. And then Kira and Burley, you've got the more perfect manicured walls, okay? So how we are is to a great extent determined, and how our style and how we ride, by our environment, okay?
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I came to ride up at Burley was 1975. Okay? It was like this epic swell, and I'd been down in Sydney surfing. There's some big, strong east swells, and like I was surfing north, staying by myself, like pipeline 12 feet, Narrabeen with Simon Anderson 10 to 12 feet. But I heard the Gold Coast was pumping, but I couldn't leave Sydney because it was so insane. So eventually I go, okay, jump in a car. I'm in the car with me and you. We drove up the coast.
We did.
Bill Delaney and Dan Malone. We drove up the coast. Do you remember that? My Holden. I had a Holden that I bought for $150. And at 35 miles an hour, I remember you used to have to hold on to that steering wheel. And I'd be shaking, and then I'd break through. I'd bust down the door. And at 40 miles an hour, I was okay. So we drove up the coast, and I paddled out at Burleigh Heads for the first time. I got to tell you, Bugs, I think I pearled on my first 6 waves.
Wow.
So the tube there is, the water is pulled so tight, and you have such a square definition between the wall and the water that you have to have this elegant, perfect trim balanced back on your board, okay?
Yep.
My style, driving from the front, driving the nose into the pearl position.
Wow.
So like I couldn't understand that way. So it was just such a different technique. And when I see Joel Parkinson and Mick, Kelly can ride anything, but their styles are very much back foot and back board because it comes from that technique that you guys developed. To me, it was like UPT MP.
Yeah.
Those were the, I don't know, maybe there's someone else I'm missing there, but those were
Wayne Dean was great in the tube.
No, Wayne, I mean, Wayne, I thought Wayne was good. He was good at Sunset too.
Yeah, he was.
A carver.
Yes.
He passed away, didn't he?
Yes, he did, sadly, yeah.
Yeah, he is a real good
Yeah.
carver. But that style, and they're super stylish, delicate, and almost like almost like an Australian Jerry Lopez vibe, you know, that sort of calmness. I mean, you guys just could like, just beautiful. And then my style was a bit more like different, you know, from South Africa, a bit more aggro. And but there's just this difference from the Bay of Plenty was more of like a nasty, unpredictable wave. So that's where I developed my style. But I was just thinking about this, just 2 schools. But when we came to Hawaii, it just sort of meshed as one.
Yes.
Because Hawaii, you didn't have that corner.
No, but
below sea level corner.
And well, it's the same thing I say to my son, like the waves around where I live, and the same as like with Bay of Plenty, Cave Rock, and those places. I maintain it's that first like 2 or 3 foot of the drop is exactly the same. So the bottom's different, but the drop in, you know, that's
exactly.
Yeah, and that's where you can prepare. You could prepare where you lived and prepare where I lived to go and surf Hawaii because of that. We're so used to taking that drop, man.
Right, and committing. You know, because I think we were both committed.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember ever. Like we never pulled back. Very seldom.
No.
Like when I rode with you all those years at Pipeline, when you swung around and you paddled for that wave, you were going to go over that edge.
Always,
At Sunset, at Pipeline, at Waimea, whatever. There was going to be none of this. Pull back. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna happen. And it's a lot of good memories chatting to you here, Bugs. It's really.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about Pipeline. I mean, because you and me and your cousin Michael, Michael Ho. I mean, we were backside really. I mean, before us, there was Sam Hawke and Al Chapman, James Booby Jones. But, we went there to really sort of, I think, surf it a little bit differently in that we'll, ride the barrel, but also that deep bottom turn and hooking off and you had that incredible spider board and, those 74, before 75, I mean, 74, we were really, just feeling our teeth out there, and you and I kind of had that pact where we knew how on your backhand, how it was absolutely crucial that you made the drop. Every drop, we had to make every drop to survive, on those single fins.
Absolutely. When I got that board from Spider Murphy that came to be called the Pink Banana, that board had that extreme rocker. So it was the first, I think, extremely rocketed board in surfing. It was a complete fluke. And I'd asked him to put some curve in, because in those days, like Jeff Hackman's Dick Brewer boards had like a flip in the nose. It was 8-footer for Sunset, and that's what I wanted it for. And Spider couldn't get the flip in it, so I put some bricks on the nose, and the board just turned into like a parabola. So I remember paddling out and surfing for the first time at Sunset. My first wave out there, I spun out, and some guy ran me over and just smashed me up. And I came back from the hospital, and someone said Pipeline was on, and I ran down there and started surfing at a Pipeline, and it was like just this amazing revelation, because you could take off. I could take off really, really late. And in those days, remember, you take off and you drop down and you do that huge bottom turn, and you try to come off the lip, like do something that had never been done before. You know, we were going for the big, like for using the whole canvas of the wave, and not just taking it and sort of starting the tube. And I remember as well, you know, like Jerry Lopez was God out there, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's the king. And I was like, wherever Jerry sits, I'm going to sit inside of him.
Oh, wow.
No. Where Jerry sits, I'm sitting on his inside. And it was so like, to think of that type of, having that type of attitude, it was really, it's really fun to think back on that. And of course, ultimate respect. You know, there was always respect, but to have that go for it attitude, and you know, our boards compared to the modern boards are crude, and you know, we certainly took chances and took our licks, but we just had that really, and it wasn't like to get our picture taken. It was, we just wanted to be the great honor, the greatest honor was who's the hottest guy and who's talking about you on the beach.
Exactly.
It's not, you wanted to be the hottest guy in the water, not just on the day of days, but on every bloody day.
Yeah.
Every day, I remember we were all like, I'm going to be the best, you know, and it was very pure. It was like advancement, progression for the sake of performance, not for the sake of getting a picture in the magazine. It was like, we wanted to be better. I wanted to be better than Rabbit, better than MR, better than Mark Thompson. You know, you just had this passion, and it was, I mean, I keep using the word pure. It was very pure, very pure.
Mm.
What about? Oh, sorry. What about in '75? There was a really long swell at Pipeline. It went for like about 10 or 12 days, and I remember about day 7 or 8, and it wasn't. It was like about a 6 to 8 foot or 8 foot probably pipe, a couple of 10-footers, but it was really glassy. And by now we're so into it, and we were actually sharing waves. There was Jerry and Rory. Remember, we would all share waves, and it was a front side, back side.
It was insane. You like riding away behind Jerry Lopez or in front of Jerry Lopez, and everyone's laughing. And
it was incredible.
I mean, today I think if you dropped in on someone, the game would be on.
Yeah.
You know, it's. I mean, it was like there was no. I
mean, no, they were encouraging us. Let's share waves. Like, let's ride it together. Like the blue, you know, the Blue Angels. You know, it was so cool. And I mean, how good was Pipe for so many days in a row? And it
was just it was an incredible run, and I think it was a really pivotal run in terms of performance progression, and you know, the media picked up on it, and the whole backside movement came into play, because certainly it had always been just a goofy footers wave, and the backsiders were relegated. Yes, Sam Hawke, you know, had a couple of nice pictures, and Al Chapman, but the performance level was, and the tube riding was not really there. You know, you don't see movies and photos of the guys pulling and coming out, and I think we were the first guys backside to really, yes, big performance on the face, but really develop the technique to you know, get inside and come out, and it was so exciting. But you know, I've got to tell you, that board that Spider made me, so 710, 18 3/4 inches wide, and like 3 1/8 thick, and all this curve. So I rode that board for 5 winters, folks, at Pipeline. You could only go left on that board. Can you imagine riding a board for 5 winters? No. I never lost it. on takeoff once
Yep.
at Papua. I never had a wipeout at Papua. I was like MR at Waimea, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Never had a wipeout. I broke the board. The next year, I started eating reef, making up for all those years.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I had so much confidence in that board. And then by then, you know, designs had changed, but I busted. But it gave me so much confidence, and it was so perfectly suited to that. But imagine that, 5 winters at Pap,
Oh.
not losing it on takeoff
Mm.
once. What a testament to your board.
And
I-
you go.
Yeah. No, go, Tim.
I was just going to say, you know, you talk about this intense competition, but this great camaraderie. Like, I wonder if you guys had a real strong sense of a shared sense of destiny early on, that, you know, your lives were going to be intertwined in this dream of professional surfing.
I think so. I do. I think there was a connectivity when I very first met Rabbit, and when I saw pictures of him. And the first time I saw a picture of Rabbit was in my local pinball parlor. They had like a little shop there, and they had a surfing magazine, and there was an Aussie magazine called Surfing World. I mean, it's still going, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
There was a shot of like a green double spread of a guy on a yellow, I think a yellow board pulling at the tube, and it just said Rabbit. I went, wow, who's this Rabbit dude? And I could see he was a young guy, you know what I mean? And then when we connected in Hawaii, and then we connected in '75 through the whole free ride thing, because some of the guys didn't want to be in Bill Delaney's movie. You know, they were too sort of high and mighty, and they'd never heard of Bill Delaney. They'd heard of Bud Brown and all these McGillivray, but who's this guy doing this new movie? And he really liked both of us, and could see that, you know, we liked each other's company, and that we were similar. We were young guys, and we wanted to go places. And I think that the reason for the success of that movie, I think, yes, it was a very special time, but I think it was the connectivity that Rabbit and myself had, that people, I think, really responded to it, because people, you know, people like that emotional connectivity. They like the fact that it wasn't like we were there on our own. We were together. You know what I mean? We had this dream, and certainly Rabbit was more of the dreamer, visionary than me. But I think together, you know, it was almost like I don't know if it's a team's the right word, but certainly I think there was a synergy there. That together we were very strong, and we became the face, I think, of the early days, along with certainly with MR, the early days of pro surfing, the three of us.
Yeah. Well, Free Ride made such an impact, but it's kind of an age-old formula in a way, like the young filmmaker picking up on the hot young guys of the day. It's kind of like Taylor Steele and the Momentum generation of its time, you know, and that formula just kind of cuts through. This is the cutting edge of surfing happening right now, and surfers all over the world are kind of drawn to it. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and also I think there was a romance there that I think was really rare, and I think he really brought out, especially in the end of that movie. Most people haven't seen that movie because it was never released on DVD. But there's a time right at the end of the movie when Rabbit and I are on the beach together, and there's no one out there, and it's a big pop, man. It's 12 to 15, and everyone's too scared to paddle out there. I had asked, I was going back to university. It was like 1975, man. I'm going back to university now. You know, I asked Rabbit, like, he said, Bugs, what are you going to do? You know, the year's coming to a close. And I mean, I've written about it, and we've spoken about it, the two of us, and he said, I'm going to be a pro surfer, mate. And that sort of, and then we paddle out together at 15 for Pub, and just the two of us. So it was so, you know, it wasn't like fictionalized. It was just this beautiful dramatic end to this period of a year, a period of surfing, because at the end of 1976, surfing entered a whole new realm. So that word free ride is so emblematic of what we were all experiencing right then. We paddled out of Pipeline, and then 76 it all started to change. So it was like the end and the beginning, all culminating on a 12 to 15 foot day apart.
Mm.
And for me, I know Sean always gives me a lot of credit here. From my perspective, I always saw it like, I saw guys like, okay, I saw PT, Ian Cairns, Mark Warren, and they were, like they had a professional outlook. But I always thought, I got a lot of inspiration from Sean Thompson and Mark Richards. And I always thought that I was a big dreamer, and I dreamed about pro surfing and the tour, and I really did. I visualized the whole thing. But I figured these are the guys that are going to be the greatest ambassadors. These are the guys we need, MR and Sean, because they're the superstars of surfing, and we need them to help with my whole dream. And I thought collectively we were all thinking the same thing. And I really believe that we kind of willed it into existence.
Yeah, we did full on. But also, those guys were a little bit older, and they had all achieved success. I mean, Ian Cairns had already won. He'd been a champion. He'd won the Smirnoff. I mean, he was at a different level to us. PT had competed in all these events in Hawaii. He was also at a higher level than us. And Monksy was a bit older than us, but he was sort of he wasn't part of that little sort of 3-pack. The three of us that were all, we were sort of a bit younger, I think, and a little bit more hungrily competitive. Not to say that Ian and PT and Mark weren't unbelievable surfers, because they were just incredible, all of them, in their own ways. Power, Mark Warren, power, incredible turns, and PT with his stylishness and amazing tube riding. And then Ian, just a full-on animal, aggro, anything, bring me the biggest wave in the world, I'll paddle over the edge. So, but we had this more of this.
The next curve. We could see the next curve.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that 74, 75 season, you guys really started to make an impact. And then you came back home, and Australia then had Coke and the Bells. Sean, you would have come for both those events in 75?
Yes, I was there 75, yeah.
Yeah.
First time surfing pro events in Australia. It was like unbelievable. Going down to Bells, staying with John Pawson, and hanging in Wollongong with Phil Byrne, driving up the coast in my $150 Holden with Dan Merkel and Bugs and Bill Delaney, and just having fun with Ricky Rasmussen, and being chased around town by Indonesian gangsters because Ricky was shagging the daughter, and wherever Ricky Rasmussen was, there was some sort of radical drama. So
Wow.
But it was so much fun surfing Cabarita and surfing a place that MP called Spot X. I don't know, what is that? Is it still there, folks?
No, not so much. It's been. You require an archaeological dig to find it now. It's buried under the sand. It's somewhere under there.
And just it just it was such a fun experience.
Yeah, what did you make of Australian surf culture when you came out, Sean?
It blew my mind. You know what I loved? I loved it that in those days, you go out and you have a surf all day, you go to the pub for dinner, and then the pub would close down at about, 8 o'clock or something. And everyone would just go to Bung's place for a party. Bung was the big party guy down in there. Bung or Bong, I can't remember what he said.
Ganjak.
Bells, huh? So every night after, when the pub closed, you'd get someone else's place for a party. I just thought, this is so fantastic. There's a party every bloody night. And then Jack McCoy had the Summer Cloud restaurant at Bells. And it was just like, the game was on. And then I'd go down the coast and you'd surf with Wayne Lynch down in Castles and all these go and surf at Cathedral Rock and go down the Ocean Road. It was just, it was such a fun time.
It was like a big caravan, wasn't it? Like we'd all go together, and we'd all go to the restaurants together. There was the eating contest. There was all those things.
We used to be in the eating contest. I remember and then you most probably we had heats the next day.
Exactly, we did at the scullery in Newport, and the the summer house in
Yeah.
Torquay. Oh, it was fantastic.
Can you imagine? Like, I remember the first Gunston 500 I won in 1973 when I was in the army. Just before the semi-finals, I was in the pie eating contest up on the stage in front of 20,000. I'm in the pie eating contest competing against Mike Lamont, and Mike Lamont shoveling pies and then just chundering everywhere.
Oh.
It was you know, I mean, it was just a different world and a different time.
Sean, I wanted to also ask you about, you know, that the early days of you going down to J-Bay. You know, I mean, it's such a special way for you. I mean, it's really, you're so synonymous with J-Bay. And, you know, just because, you know, even when I went there in the 1970s, I mean, it was just there was just a dirt car park. It was nothing there at all. And there was the Savoy Hotel and, you know, there wasn't much in the town, but what a special place.
Oh, it is a lovely place. You know, those places around the world that are like that, and there's not many of them. You know, you have Bells Beach, which really reminds me of J-Bay, you know, the culture and the heritage and the protection of the environment. Very, very similar. I went there for the first time with my dad and my cousin Michael, my brother Paul, Jeremy Yates, and we drove down. We were driving down to Cape Town. It was our first safari, we called it, safari. And we drove, it's like 1,000 miles to Cape Town. But on the way, we stopped off at J-Bay, Jeffreys Bay. And we checked into the hotel. We didn't even know where to go. We woke up the very next morning. There was no one there. We found our way to the beach. And we drive up and we walk down in the sand. And there's Mike Thompson, Jeremy Yates, my brother, my dad, and I. And it's perfection. 4 to 6 feet, the best waves I've ever seen in my entire life. Because I've only been surfing beach breaks my whole life. And I see these, I'm 12 years old, and I just see these perfect waves, and the sun is rising up, and the three of us sort of picked our way across the rocks. We jump in the water, and it just have this enduring memory of this connection to the wave. And then you have this scent. They have a fragrant bush there they call feinbos. It's kind of similar in some ways to if you smell a skunk in America, very faintly. It's very pungent. So that embeds in your consciousness. So now, like I'm driving down, I can be driving down somewhere in Florida, and I'll smell the faint scent of the skunk, and I think I'm bloody driving into the terminal for J-Bay. So
I always tell people the same thing. There's this scent in the air. It's just incredible.
And then, you know, when we started riding that wave, and, you know, when we first rode it, we rode it, V-bottoms had just been introduced, the McTavish and Midget Fraley, Matt Young V-bottoms. And then as we got better at surfing, we moved further up the point, because we only used to surf the end of the wave. It was called the point, and then we started surfing tubes, and then we started surfing up further. And
no leg ropes.
No, leg ropes. Sure, they weren't invented then. I think leg ropes were only invented in like 73 or 4 or something like that. Yeah, so you have to be very, very, very careful. And supers, you know, with all the muscles and the rocks, that was like, it was like so scary.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember in 1970, after I came back from the World Contest in Australia, I watched Ted Spencer, Matt Young, and Wayne Lynch surf 6 to 8 foot super tubes with no leg ropes, riding these keel fin boards. It was amazing, amazing to see.
Wow. Ted Spencer. Ted Spencer at J-Bay, that's super cool.
Let me tell you, when I first saw Ted Spencer surf at Burleigh Heads in 1975, he was still one of the best surfers in the world.
Yeah,
in 1975.
Yes.
He was so, that guy was so advanced and so good.
A great surfer.
Yeah. And so, you know, by 75, 76, you guys make a huge impact in Hawaii. And then we have a pro tour, and you guys win. Well, PT wins the first world title. You guys win the next 2. Was there ever a moment where you kind of looked at each other and went like, wow, this is actually happening? You know, this dream that we've been kind of willing into existence, we've actually manifested it.
Well, I mean, I always say to people that we did will it into existence. And you know, one of the reasons why we were so exuberant and so over the top was firstly, we would turn up to interviews, we would do media, we would talk the sport up like it was unbelievable. We made out we were millionaires. We just taught, you know, and world superstars, playboys going around the world. And this is, we talked it up because we weren't trying to create a sport for Kelly Slater, who was going to come along and be the greatest and really reap the rich rewards. We were doing it for us.
For survival, because we loved it. But I'll tell you what, there was a moment there, and I have a photo, Bugs, from the Dan Merkel. I actually saw it the other day. I think it's been published. And it's during the 1977 Stubbies. So the 1977 Stubbies was when pro surfing started, to me. Yes, in 1976 we had a circuit in retrospect, but like all the best surfers in the world congregated there at that 1977 Stubbies because now pro surfing was starting. So I remember standing on the beach with you wearing a pair of Springbok baggies from one of the guys has given you your pair. I've got a little pair of baggies on, and I think I've got an Ocean and Earth hat from Gecko. And we're standing on the beach together. And I can still remember standing with you side by side, looking out at the Stubbies and thinking at the time, this is it. And, both of us, we're young, we're confident, we think we're big studs. And we're standing there together, and it's like the whole thing is unfolding. And that was sort of, for me, the moment when I thought, wow, this is something's happening here. Something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
I know it was the master drew on with man-on-man surfing at Burley Heads, perfect Burley, and that finals day, and of course the semi-finals, Sean Thompson versus Mark Richards, Michael Peterson versus Robert Bartholomew. I mean, you couldn't have got a bigger theatre.
Awesome. But I've got to say this. So the biggest, best advancements in surfing have come from surfers.
Yeah.
The biggest, best advancements. When I think about, what Fred Hemmings did in Hawaii, creating these events, the tour. When I think about Peter Druin, man-on-man, decimal point judging system. When I think about, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your backside, when I think about best surfers, best waves, that these fundamental seismic shifts haven't come from someone with a bloody MBA, someone who's evaluating and strategizing. They've come from the core, they've come from the heart. And yes, people have seen that there's maybe a marketing or economic motive, but ultimately those decisions were made by surfers, and they had taken the sport up to the next level. I mean, you think of Mark Richards and the Twin Fin, you think of Simon and the Thruster and some of the great, apparel companies that were building, Gordon with Billabong and Greeny with Quicksilver and Jack with O'Neill and all this stuff that, these iconic brands and this whole movement and this lifestyle has come from a very, very, very pure space. It's come from the absolute core.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's so
because
true.
people are, I see all this. I read the stuff on the web, and I'm going, where's all this who are these kooks? Who are these kooks talking about surfing like it's this commercial, a capitalistic venture? They've got to go back to the roots, China. That wasn't how it was. And let me tell you, that's not how it is today. I mean, I would guarantee you, Gabriel Medina, Italo Ferreira, Kelly Slater, they would all surf for free. They would all be on the free ride program because that's who they are, and that's how much they love it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Hey, we're nearly out of time. We could talk all day, and we should probably do this again because there's so many stories. I don't know. You got any reflections on what it's been like lately, Sean? Not being able to travel. We're such nomads as surfers, and having to just spend time in one spot.
It's been, it's been really interesting. So, my life has changed tremendously over the last number of years. And, a lot of people in sort of surf don't really know what I do. But when I retired from the tour and then ultimately moved to the United States with my wife, and I sold my brand Instinct, and then I started another company, Collar, and I started another company called Solitude, and we ultimately sold that to a publicly traded company. And then we lost our beautiful son, Matthew, and it was just devastating for us. And ultimately, you know, we managed to come through that because I'd written a book that was developed from a little card that I created. It was called the Surfer's Code Card, which was 12 simple lines that surfing had taught me about life. I will always paddle back out. I will realize that all surfers are joined by one ocean. I'll never turn my back on the ocean. I will realize that there'll always be another way. Just simple principles that we all know. Anyway, the card became popular, led to a couple of books. And then as part of my healing process, I started speaking at large gatherings, from churches to synagogues to the biggest business conferences in the world, working for the biggest brands in the world, Google, Cisco, PwC, Disney Gap. I mean, I speak at all these conferences. I spoke at this for 600 people a couple of hours ago, a live stream. So I moved my whole work, because there were no more conferences, into these live streams. Last week I did 4 live streams for a company called Gilead Sciences. They're the first company in the world to develop a treatment for coronavirus.
Wow.
So it's about a $20 billion company. So I did a live stream for all their work-at-home teams around the world, thousands of people. Because people are suffering from stress, anxiety, and despair. And I've developed through surfing this little code concept that people can use these simple principles to activate purpose in their life. And purpose is a very, very powerful force. People that live with a sense of purpose live twice as long, are more motivated, more successful. It has all these academically validated benefits to one's life. But what I do is I get people to write their own codes. Okay? So my original Surfer's Code was 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. And now I get hundreds of thousands of people a year to write their own codes. Okay? So they write these words, and then they read them in a corporate environment, or they read them in a family environment, and they share these words, and they create this emotional connectivity, and they create a positive wave. It's called the positive wave of emotional contagion, and it impacts behavior in an unbelievable way. So you have hundreds of thousands of people writing these codes, sharing these codes, and spreading a good wave around the world. And it all came from surfing, and it all came from a scruffy, blonde-haired dude that I stood on the beach with at 15-foot pipeline. And I asked him, "What you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to be a pro surfer, mate." So Bugs, I love you. You are awesome. You have been like a light in my life.
Wow, that's so cool, Sean. I mean, Tim, I mean, after hearing what Sean said, I'm feeling a bit slack. What about yourself? we're all going to go, well, wonder what he's doing over there.
Making some sourdough bread or...
But, you know, just to finish off, I mean, first of all, you know, Sean, you know, is, you know, he's more than an ambassador for the sport, you know, you know, even just what he's doing now, like surfing, you know, he's just been such an iconic figure. I always knew that. I always knew though that, you know, beyond surfing, that Sean would always make a mark in life and in the world. I always knew that about him from the first time I met him, and I'm so stoked to hear you doing what you're doing, and keep it on. You know, I just want to say to you, I was next to you. You don't realise this. I was right next to you on my last great moment at Pipeline. It was a day. It was about 1988. It was a 15-foot day. You and I were the only two that survived a wash-through. A wash-through set came. Like every single person out. It was just you and me sitting out the back at Pipeline, paddling with another big set in our face. You turned around to me and you said, "Bugs, it's just like the old days." We paddled over a wave, and there was something, I had a brain snap. I turned around, there's this unbelievable big wedge coming. I turned around with those words ringing in my head. I turned around, I took off on this most amazing wave, a massive, massive wave, and I went right. I went right. And the whole thing, it lined up, it connected back there, off the wall, everything. And it was the biggest, roundest thing I'd ever pulled into in my life. And I just ate my lunch so big time, and I got smashed, held onto the bottom, pinned onto the bottom. I crawled up to the beach on my hands and knees. Herbie Fletcher came down and looked at me, and it was that famous Roberto Duran line, and I went, "No mas, no mas."
But that will Parkline will do it to you. And you know, there's a line there. And once you cross the line of Park, you never go back. The last time I surfed Pipeline was like 95. And Randy, I don't know what I'm over there doing some commentary, and Randy says, "Oh, we're going to have an event, previous Pipeline." And it's like 10 feet, send us out there. And I'm going, "Oh, no. He said, "You're going out there." I go out there, and like I get a few okay waves, and then I paddle into this wedge, and I pull in, and I'm inside the barrel on a blue 7-footer. And I think, man, this is like 1977, and I'm flying through this tube, expecting to come out, you know, with the spit. Next thing, I'm lying on the coral. My board has hit me so hard in the face, split my nose open. I'm actually underwater, seeing stars. I pulled my way to the surface. I remember I got blood everywhere, walked up the beach, people are running away from me. I went, that's it. I will never surf Pipeline again. You know when your days are done at that place.
And amazing, we both finished the same way, pinned on the bottom at back door. But and I remember, and the words ringing in my head were from Derek Dorner, and he said, "Bugs," he said, "you retire from pipe before it retires you." Unreal, Sean.
Hey, it's been such a pleasure, and so wonderful to go through these memories. And Bugs, I just want to tell you, just from me and from all the guys that were your contemporaries and your rivals, you know how much respect we had for you, and you know, you really you're a great leader for all of us, and what you did after your career with really changing the strategy of the ASP and now the WSL. It's just been wonderful to see what you've given back, to see that you've become this leader of our tribe. And it's I mean, I've been so honored and privileged to have been your pal and your rival. And you can see Carla walks up to you and says, "Oh, my favorite guy in the world." This is how we feel about you. We have such a deep love for you, Bugs. And I know we don't see each other, we don't speak to each other as much as we used to, but you've got to know, from the Thompsons here in Santa Barbara, we've got this great love and respect for you. And you're just one of those special people that I've met through my life. So thank you for all you've done.
Well, that's so cool, man. I love you guys too. And you know, I always say, you know, really true friends, when you don't have to see each other every month, you don't have to see each other every year, but as soon as you see each other, you just take it up where you left off. Unreal. That's always like that for you and me.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure just kind of sitting in on you guys reconnecting.
Pleasure, Tim.
Yeah, I'll let you know, Sean, too. Rabbit's keeping the free ride spirit alive and well. He's got a new surfboard sponsor behind him. Nev's done a range of boards.
Oh yeah, I read about that. Wow, Nev, what a great guy he is. You know, send him my love. He's a great guy.
It's called our board. It's called Never Surrender.
Never surrender. Isn't that funny? I love that. Straighter, bigger, thicker.
Yeah. So still living the free ride dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Unreal, man.
Unreal. Great to see. We should do this again.
Yeah,
awesome.
Sure.
Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Unreal.
Cheers.
Thanks.
So much fun.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Rabbit tails, come and hear ya.